The Wii. I like it. While most first-party Nintendo games for the system were great and used the motion controls very well, third parties had a bit more trouble. Most major developers couldn't put their current-gen games on the system because of its lack of power, so the Wii got a lot of majorly downgraded titles or titles that shared the same name but were basically completely different games. But occasionally, some publishers would decide to make completely original games for the system, and one example of this is Sonic the Hedgehog. His first major title on the system was a Wii exclusive titled Sonic and the Secret Rings. This game is terrible. The game is controlled entirely by motion controls, and it just simply isn't right. The game did have a few glimmers of hope, like the level design, and the game itself sold decently, so eventually it was given a sequel with Sonic and the Black Knight. The game opens with a pretty well-animated cutscene of this wizard lady summoning Sonic into her world to defeat King Arthur, who has turned evil after becoming immortal and is summoning armies from the underworld to terrorize the kingdom. Sonic then makes quick work of his goons and goes to attack him before being stopped by Merlina. After this, we get a cutscene that I accidentally skipped and we are thrown into the first level. While there are a few CGI cutscenes here and there, most of the cutscenes are still images that move around sometimes. These cutscenes overall look pretty nice because it has a storybook look to it, which fits the game very well. The story starts off very simpler, with Sonic's main goal being to take down King Arthur and stop him from terrorizing the world. Sonic eventually gets the sacred sword Caliburn by pulling it out of a rock, but Caliburn does not only act as his weapon, but also a mentor as well. Caliburn has the ability to talk and basically acts as Sonic's character foil in this game, being the one who does things by the book. The conversations between these two are usually pretty entertaining, as they usually end with them just insulting each other. One other big component to the story is that some of the characters are represented by characters we already know, like Sir Lancelot being Shadow, and this random blacksmith being Tails. It's actually pretty funny. This blacksmith gets maybe like 5 lines maximum, and then never really talks again, which is pretty funny since he is also Tails, who is, you know, one of the main characters of the series. So getting into the actual gameplay of this game is where people's opinions start to divide on this game. This is because the game is a Wii exclusive, which meant that it had to have excessive use of motion controls. Now to start off, this game is not nearly as bad as Secret Rings, where almost all of the actions were controlled by motion controls. That was absolutely insane, and I don't know what they were thinking. Here, all of Sonic's normal movements are controlled by buttons like you would expect, making this feel more like a traditional Sonic game. But in case you forgot, Sonic has a little sword guy now, and that's where the motion controls come in. You see, every action you want to perform with a sword requires you to perform a little waggle. And to some people, this is atrocious and terrible, and motion controls are evil. I don't really care that much though. While no, I don't prefer this over button controls, in this game's specific case, it's not that bad. The game isn't very precise on what you have to do, so just a slight wiggle works completely fine. Occasionally the game has trouble picking up the input, or sometimes it can be too sensitive and pick up very slight movements, which can be frustrating, but most of the time it works fine enough. As far as moves that are available, we have the normal homing attack, which basically does nothing, a little dash that allows you to pick up some speed, and then the different moves you can pull off with your sword. Most of these have nothing to do with how you swing the Wiimote, but rather what Sonic is doing when you swing the remote. But by far the most useful one is the sword combined with the homing attack, because you can take out tons of enemies with this. The only action that felt awkward to perform to me was going backwards, which you have to do more than you might think. The levels themselves are where I think the game really shines and make the slightly frustrating controls worth it. The levels are laid out on a big map and you unlock them at a linear pace, but occasionally you get optional challenges that you can do if you want to. The extra challenges are usually just stuff like defeat this many enemies before you reach the goal. There are a few of these challenges that are required, but overall you don't have to do them if you don't want to. While the layouts are less complex than other games because of your limited movement options, they still do a lot of cool things. You can now climb on certain walls using your sword, as well as having tons of set pieces that you can do tricks on. On top of this, a lot of these levels have their own gimmicks that make them all stand out from each other. You can occasionally come across these townspeople during the levels, and they shake things up a little bit. If you hit them, it takes points off of your overall score, But in some cases, they put enemies inside of a crowd of townspeople, and it is literally impossible not to hit them. There are also certain ones that you can stop to talk to and give your rings to up your score and get more followers. This sort of breaks the pace a little bit because you have to completely stop and then do a quick time event. I think that this system is an interesting idea, but just doesn't really fit a game of this style very well, and can sometimes make the levels a little worse. The enemies also never really changed that much throughout the course of the game. Occasionally a new one would get introduced, but after a certain point you are just seeing the same enemies over and over again, which kind of sucks because this game has some interesting enemy designs, especially for this series, but you can get tired of them pretty quickly because they never really change or vary between levels. The level themes look really nice and detailed, and the medieval theming really helps to add on to that. We have places from forests, towns within a giant castle, a dragon's lair, and a town near a volcano, all very interesting locations, which is very refreshing to see after having played some of the more recent Sonic games. We also occasionally get boss fights with the Knights of the Round Table. These usually don't take super long, especially once you figure out their attacks, because then it's just you waiting for a second and then completely destroying them. The only one I had any real trouble with was Percival, because they had an attack pattern that was a little harder to figure out. And your reward for beating these bosses are cutscenes that portray Sonic characters trying to off themselves. So after Sonic meets up with the Lady of the Lake, we learn that to beat King Arthur, he needs to gather all of the sacred swords which are in the possession of the Knights of the Round Table. After gathering them all, you are off to fight King Arthur. This fight is pretty simple. You dodge his attacks until you have a chance to absolutely rip into this guy. After defeating him, he disappears, and then credits. But in a big twist, if you open the game after the credits roll, you will see that you have a new mission to complete. And when opening it, we get a new story cutscene where Sonic gives Merlina the scabbard, and we learn that King Arthur was actually never real and created by Merlina's grandfather. We also learn that Merlina is actually evil and wants to make a world that never ends because things ending makes her sad. So she puts the scabbard into the ground, releasing evil stuff from the underworld. After this, we get one of the coolest levels in the game where you have to make your escape from the castle under a time limit, giving it a really cool sense of urgency. And since it happens right after that huge story dump, it gives the level this feeling of urgency and confusion while you are still processing what just happened. This level also has a gimmick where you cut these waves of water to get them out of your way, and I think that's pretty cool. After this section, Sonic teams up with the Knights of the Round Table to take down Merlina. You also get the ability to play as the other knights, which is really cool as they all have their own unique moveset. The only downside is that to me, Lancelot and Percival just didn't really click with me, as I felt their moveset didn't really fit the crowds of enemies you have to take down. But I did enjoy playing as Gawain, because he can take down a lot of enemies like Sonic can, and he also has Knuckles' glide, which I thought was really cool. The levels from this point on are also absolutely amazing. We have one in the lava area where we get to surf on lava with a rock, a giant fortress / prison in the middle of a giant field, and a forest that has been completely taken over by the magic that Merlina is using. These levels really show the difference between Sonic levels from this era and modern Sonic levels. These are just way more interesting and haven't been done before. It's crazy how people might want original ideas over the same stupid green wasteland over and over again. So after putting all of the sacred swords into these stone things, it's time to take on Merlina. After getting beat up for a while, Sonic uses the power of the sacred swords to form Excalibur and turn into Excalibur Sonic. Then we have the final boss, which is overall pretty simple but fun. Oh, and this is what happens when you beat the boss. Sonic then tells Merlina that she should not be sad, and then it is revealed that Sonic is actually King Arthur. Credits. Sonic and the Black Knight is a game that I think is pretty special. It may not be anywhere near the best in the series, but it still has a lot of interesting ideas and concepts that it brings to the table. A lot of people mock the sword gimmick in this game, but I think it works fine and can actually be pretty fun at some points. This game was the last game in the series to actually have a pretty decent story before we would enter the dark times, which is why it really sucks to see this game get such harsh treatment from reviews, because it really isn't that bad. People just weren't willing to give anything a chance, and I think that for a while there, it scared Sonic Team out of trying anything new or creative. This game was actually going to get a sequel, and it would have focused on Greek mythology, which would have been amazing, but it ultimately got cancelled and we never saw anything from it. But hey, if you haven't played this game yet, you can get it on eBay for like $20 or less, and it's pretty short, so I definitely recommend it. Oh wait, I forgot about the multiplayer mode! Just kidding, you don't care about that.